And we're now getting some breaking news. This is regarding the West Asia war and its global impact. Now, crude oil prices explode amid the West Asia war. Brent crude near $120 a barrel. West Asia war is still continuing, and this also comes amid the Strait of Hormuz flare-up. Oil is on the boil. Global crude prices are on fire. They're constantly increasing. Highest crude oil prices since June 22nd. So that is what we're witnessing. It's the highest crude oil prices ever since June 22nd. And the crude is currently at $120 per barrel. And this is the all-time high of the crude oil prices. And the big question now remains that will the domestic petrol prices also rise with this significant increase in the crude oil prices? Brent crude oil is up by 28% in just 24 hours. So 28% increase in merely 24 hours. In fact, US President Donald Trump has said that the oil will be cheap after Iran loses nuclear weapons. And he has also said that it's a small price that one has to pay for this war. He is referring to the rise in the crude oil prices. And in fact, my colleague Chetan Bhutani is now joining us to understand this impact better. Chetan, how vulnerable is India's economy to these developments, to this rapid increase in the crude oil prices?
Well, clearly it shows that the crude oil prices hike of 28% 24 hours has actually disrupted supply expectations and rapid global energy markets. For India, which imports over 85% of its crude oil requirement, the surge in oil prices could have significant macroeconomic implications. Firstly, India's import oil bill is likely to rise sharply, putting pressure on the country's current account deficit and, of course, the rupee. Second, fuel prices which come under pressure domestically, while petrol and diesel are currently moderated by government. However, the interventions and tax adjustments sustain crude oil above $100 could eventually force price revisions, which could actually mean that at retail, when you or me as a customer buy petrol and diesel, we could actually have to shell out more. But eventually now, Oil Minister Hardeep Singh Puri would be making a statement at around 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock in the parliament on the crude oil prices and how India is managing its energy needs, even though in the West Asia war. So yes, all eyes on the parliament today when Oil Minister Hardeep Singh Puri makes a statement on how India will manage this issue of the immediate spike in the crude oil prices.
Nathan, also could the government absorb some of the shock through some tax adjustments?
Actually, has been absorbing the crude oil prices hike, even though, but still, in the past 1 or 2 years, the crude oil prices have largely remained stable. In fact, when this was started, the crude oil prices was actually around $70, $68 to $70 were hovering around. So the oil marketing companies also gathered a lot of fuel from cheap Brent crude prices and actually filled up their coffers. But yes, that would have been exhausted in the past 7-8 days if the supply would have stopped. So the government is likely to absorb most of the shock. However, oil marketing companies, even though they are facing a whole lot of losses, the government could probably give them a subsidy or increase prices at retail for a rupee or two to ensure that in the next coming days, the government is not impacted and maintaining a cushion for the oil marketing companies as well.
All right, Chetan, thank you for those details and for that context. So the crude oil prices, the global crude oil prices are at an all-time high because of the raging West Asia war. And what is expected is that the consumers in India might also have to bear the brunt, as there could be an increase in the price of petrol and diesel. It remains to be seen how much is the increase. The government will be making a statement also on the developments.